Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Kane Roberts. How are you?
Hey, nice to see you, man. I think
Nice
we
to see
tried
you.
before, but it
We,
didn't work out. So that's got to be my fault because I am the biggest flake when it comes to a lot of stuff. I've been working on, independent films, independent films, like mostly animation stuff, and the animators are in China. So my hours are all crazy. And of course, I have to have a translator there in these conference calls, and they have a tremendous amount of stress they have to deal with right now. So it's kind of a bit of a deal. And it's been going on for a few years, actually. So,
that's really cool. I was wondering because I know you do a lot of graphic or animation stuff and along with music. So I was curious because that's actually pulled into your last album and video. You've kind of
right.
taken that skill set and added it to music.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, Bob Ezrin, he produced The
Kiss
Wall, and
and everything, right? Yeah.
he was saying that creativity, if you're a creative person, it can be transmogrified, sorry about that word, to different types of creativity. So if you're good at music and you have a creative heart, and you develop stuff with your intellect and your feelings and stuff like that, you can apply it to different types of creative enterprises. Like, for example, my graphics thing, I drew comic books, not professionally, but as a kid, I was a big Marvel guy. So I was always drawing all the superheroes and doing all that stuff. So it developed kind of visual acuity of my own. And so it became valuable. Later, I ended up working at a very big broadcast design company. I was executive producer at this company that did commercials for the Super Bowl and all that stuff. So these people were supremely talented. So I was able to just sort of, let some of it rub off on me and try to apply it as well. So, yeah. So, working on these films, we're developing characters and doing script consulting and a whole bunch of stuff. So, it's a lot of fun, and it really doesn't cut into my music at all. I play guitar every day, and, I'm going to do another couple of songs and some videos and stuff like that. So, it works out well.
Now, are you going to be? Is it because where is you working on another album totally, or is it just singles?
No,
Or
I've given up on the whole record company thing, especially, the way the market works is whatever is like currently the most profitable, they'll try to manage it
yeah,
and juice it up or whatever. I don't fall in that category. I fall in a category of like something that happened a while ago, but I still really love recording, and I really love, the visual aspect of it. So I got some really great plans for it's one more video, not two, but I'm going to be doing two songs. One of them is actually an Alice Cooper song that I did a long time ago. And then, we've got some new material. And then recently I've been working a little bit with Ezrin and Alice. So we'll see what happens. Could be some fun stuff. Yeah.
that'd be awesome. That would be awesome because you did with Alice on your last album that you did,
Yeah.
or newest,
Yeah.
oldest, right?
Yeah. It
It's
was
noted the pandemic is kind of frozen time, so it feels like it's everything is like new old. When you talk about anything in the past
great.
3 years, it
Yeah.
can be a new album, but it didn't have legs on it yet,
Yeah. It's like the movie projector shut down
right?
for
And you're
a while, started up again, and it's
right.
like, oh, I think I remember the old life. But yeah, I remember I was working on a song called Beginning of the End off my last album, The New Normal. And, I had sung it, and I
Mhm.
was like, I'm pretty fucking good. No, I did. I was just saying like, hey, I said, suddenly I was sitting there, I was going, what if Alice sang these verses with
Mhm.
me? Because, I'm talking about corporate greed and everything. And that's right in Alice's wheelhouse, and it's from that era where people were becoming awake to like the corporations and the government and how
Yeah.
they, not all of them, but, a lot of them have the wrong sort of motives. And I called him up, and everybody was going, geez, really? You think you can get him to sing on it? And I said, well, probably, maybe. Yeah. So I called him up, and he goes, hey, I'm in town. I'm in Hollywood. I'll come right over. I couldn't believe how easy it was. You know what I mean? And of course, he destroys the song in such a great way. He's so good, and
That's
then
awesome.
the revelation was I started working on a guitar solo, and I said, rather than doing, oh, the guitar solo goes here. Now, I know a lot of people still love that, and they expect it, and they anticipate. But I said, what if Alyssa White Glues fell out of the sky and blew the whole thing up, you know. And boy, does she do that. She's such a
She's
fantastic
a monster with that voice of hers.
Oh, and when she sings legit, it's
yeah.
like a saxophone or so. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree.
Plus, they both came in, and then I threw in a guitar solo at the end just because I wanted to, you know. So, but yeah, you know, working with Alice is always very easy. We pick up right where we left off when we were touring every time, and yeah, so I'm pretty lucky, and you know, working with him again a little bit, you know, we'll see what shakes loose, but it's just nothing but fun. Same with Ezrin. I mean, I love Ezrin. He's a really intense guy, but he's got a big heart. So
right. Legendary. Well, you know, the thing with Alf, I'll say, because in anyone's watching, probably me and you will be bouncing back and forth. But
sure.
You came in at a good time in his career. People that don't know, he was becoming newly sober, and you were the new young gun, crushing it. You kind of brought the metal back into him, brought him up, and he's been on upward ever since. Really, still, you know what I mean. His last album still crushes. He's still maintained that level. He has not dipped.
Oh no, no,
not during any of the fads that was this or that and the shoegaze.
No,
he's always been Alice Cooper the whole way with strong albums. I don't think it's surprising that he would talk to you or you get him right away. I think the hardest thing with getting with most of musicians or people that we at that height of success is just coordinating around, like, whether it be their handlers. You didn't have to do that. You talked to his wife, which was direct line.
Yeah.
But I think with a lot of musicians, I've found, you talk to them, they're pretty accessible. It's usually just they're like, I'll do anything. Sometimes it's just the management team around them.
Sure.
They're like blocking you.
Right.
I mean, you were the man, you know?
Yeah. Well, they help people beyond what they really are truly like. Alice's true nature. Have you met him or?
Not yet. No. Hopefully.
Yeah. You meet, you know, which, you know, you're very easy to do, but if you meet him, you'll think he's treating me like we've known each other for 10 years. And he's like that with everybody. Somebody out of the blue, we're walking down the street. We got lunch in Santa Monica near the studio. And we're walking back and somebody came up for the autograph. You know, I didn't know who he was. He just stops. And they say something and he makes a joke out of it and he talks. And then, you know, we move on. It's always the way I don't think I saw him angry once, but that was it. Like, in other words, there were no confrontations between the two of us. And that's because of him. I was very hyper back in those days. And he was always like sort of the governor, you know what I mean? So he calm down, you know, but yeah, he's one of the most accessible and friendly guys out there. If you happen to see him, he won't throw attitude at you. Yeah.
And I do honestly, just not to him, but also the fact I feel like more rock artists are more open than other genres of music.
Yeah.
Just in general, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not everyone, but I've just found even doing the show, like,
no, but it's in every, you're right. But it is in every genre, but you're right. I mean,
people from the 80s and 90s rock, 70s rock musicians are very grounded and there's no huge ego. I mean, you have to have some kind of id to perform on a stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of ego, but you don't need to be, you know, that.
Yeah. There are a funny story. Shep Gordon was my manager, and he was telling me he was at the Grammys and he was with Luciano Pavarotti. He was standing in a hallway and a big guy comes over to him, come and say, "Hey, you have to turn towards the wall. Prince is here. He doesn't want anybody to look at him." So Shep and Pavarotti turned around and they were just sort of standing, didn't care, you know. And when Prince walked by, Pavarotti, who has a huge booming voice, he goes, "Who's Prince?" I thought that was like when Shep was cracking up. He said it was just funny. Because it really depends on, you know, who you're talking to and what environment you're in as to whether or not you've got some sort of cachet to, like, you know, pull on. So,
well, I've heard that before too, you know, the whole eye looking down thing on a few people, but, you know, but overall, I think with Prince it was actually insecurity. I think he was so inside his own head.
Yeah.
That it was beyond.
We never knew him. I just thought that was a funny
No,
story.
I think it's hilarious too, because it is funny. Like, why would I look down? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. They're like, "How do you talk to that person?" I'm like, just with words, just like you do. They're great
Yeah.
people.
Or if somebody said hi to him, unless the bodyguards, it's like what you said, the handlers would get in the way. And you know what I mean? But I haven't really met any musicians that I didn't think were like super, super cool. I mean, and even people that some people warned me about, like Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, that they're tough business, straightforward, full on work ethic, nice guys, nothing strange. I mean, they're tough. I mean, they're from New York. You know, I am too. So, you know, you can get into it with them, but they get it, you know, and they're not out to rip anybody off or hurt anybody. That's not what they do. So,
well, I think the thing is that a lot of, whether it not be a show or online, they like to, things get taken out of context. You know what I mean?
yeah.
How are you talking to them? Like, there's a certain artist I won't mention who I've spoken to on the show, whatever. And people like behind the scenes, like, I can't, you know, depends what mood you talk to this guy and this and this and this. I'm like, I've talked to him quite frequently, and he's always been great. What are the contexts of these situations that are happening with people? You know, you can't be 24/7 on somebody at the wrong time, or what your demands are. You know, of course you're gonna look like a jerk. I look like a jerk if you talk to me 23 hours out of the day. This is a good hour you have with me right now.
Something I haven't really told a lot of people, but I at one point, Bob Ezrin called me up and he said, "Hey, I need you to play guitar on Rod Stewart's record." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I went there. I didn't expect Rod Stewart to be there, and so I go there and I'm setting up my stuff in the room there with the board and everything. And I look, and Rod is standing in the vocal booth, and I went like, "Wow, he's here," you know. So I finished tuning and everything, and Ezrin walks in and he goes, "Okay, I want you to do a live blues with Rod Stewart." And right away, I'm thinking Jeff Beck did this, you know, like all the guitar player from the Faces and, you know, whatever, just that
Ronnie,
voice.
everyone, yeah.
Oh my God. You know what I mean? So I did it. And, you know, you really, when that voice came through those speakers, it just floored me. But I was able to handle it. And, you know, and so Ezrin goes in there and suddenly Rod storms out. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I must have really sucked. You know what I mean? And he comes in and he just goes, "Well, some people think they know more than I do." And he said, "You were great." And he leaves. They invited me to, I couldn't go because the second day I played, they invited me up to his house to have shepherd's pie. You know, and I was like, you know, his assistant did, and I wasn't able to. But I had heard so many nightmare stories about Rod Stewart, and he was just incredible. He's totally into his art and what he does and how he looks and how he feels. But he was a great guy to me. So I'll always say, you know, he was a prince of a guy. This you know, kind of young, kind of knucklehead that, you know, couldn't even believe he was in the room with him. You know what I mean?
Well, I've actually heard stories about him taking other young bands out to party and have fun with too. And once again, I think it's in that situation, he has what he wants for good music. And sometimes if you're in the way of it or whatever, his goal is to do this. It's not to do with you. It's the song, it's the performance, it's the look. He's got the big picture, you know, and that's his goal. And if you're going to get in the way, he's going to fight you on it because he has a vision.
Well, he's a lot to deal with, and pretty much the only guy. I mean, I know Ezrin could handle it, and that's the thing. You know, they made a great record together. They finished it up, but you know, they would butt heads because they're two big personalities. And
but you need that, don't you agree? You need that. You need to have another personality to butt heads with somebody who's that big at that point. Because
I heard a thing. It was a quote by Jack Nicholson. He said, "I'll go on the set with a brand new young director." And he said, I'll go home and I'll say, "I can't believe what I said to this kid. I was like beating the crap out of him." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's because of that sort of, that big,
hierarchy,
that abyss between the two of them. But, you know, at the end of the day, the director has learned so much. And it's just, you know, at the end of a film, you know, you go into, it's like me when I finished my first tour with Alice. I feel like now I'm really a musician. You know, up to then, I had all these, you know, I'll never forget, I'm in Boston. I'm at the New England Conservatory, and I'm the best fucking guitar player that ever lived, you know, in my mind. And then I move out to California. It was like, Jesus, I mean, it was like so many great players were just shredding the fuck out of me. So, you know, I got to work, obviously. So it's that type of a thing, you know, you have a real experience with people that have done it a million times. I mean, like, you know, that first show that we did with that's on that Welcome the Nightmare Returns video. We're at Joe Louis Arena, and the band is very nervous. Alice walked out, and as soon as he started singing and performing, he just pulled us all with him. We were all completely calm after that.
I love that video. I bought that. I was going to college for recording, actually, in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I had that. I bought that. I remember VHS for kids. Look it up.
Yeah.
And I must have played that a billion times. That concert was like one of my favorite things.
Well,
that was the best show, man. Oh.
When Alice kicks that gate open at the beginning, it's like explosive. And think of it, this is a guy that hadn't done a show sober in decades, and he just came out of rehab. And of course, he and I worked together, and we got ourselves in shape. But he killed it, and in this environment that he hadn't typically been in, this super heavy metal sound and everything. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to somebody, and they said, "What was that like?" And I said, "Well, for me, it was just I respect what had gone before." Alice had developed this incredible history. He changed culture and worldwide with his music, and his original band was phenomenal, unbelievable. You look at them, and they're all iconic, all of them. Mm-hmm. So I told Alice, "You don't want to come back and just survive rehab. You have to come back, and you can't do an oldies but goodies show. You have to come back like a nuclear Alice as opposed to a survivor." And so we started working in that regard, and it turned out to be a good influence for him at that time, because bands like Ozzy and a lot of Van Halen, all these incredibly vital music was out there. So.
Well, and I think it plays also probably played well to you and your style, because that's what you sounded like. You're not going to go back to his original guitar players, because nobody sounds like that guy. And
and I would
that's a one-time deal. You don't need to do it twice.
I wouldn't want to hunt that down, and other guitar players had been instructed to do so, and to try to preserve the sanctity. But in my mind, because I was injecting a new sort of bloodstream into these classic, amazing songs. So it was a joy for me, and Alice ended up loving it. So it
brought me to Alice, because I loved past Alice, but at that point, the rock world had so much powerful music.
Yeah,
it would have been until later in my life where I would have gone back to revisiting Alice.
Yeah,
older. Those years, I would have been like, I dig him, I see what he did, but I'm going to listen to this Van Halen, or this, other album, this Metallica album, because there's got some guitars, and it's guitar time.
Yeah, and the basic thrust of it, the sort of heart and soul of metal like that is got a tremendous amount of atmosphere and power, and that's what we wanted to. Because everybody, I'm sure people were going, is Alice going to be able to sing over a band like that? And man, did he kill it. It was unbelievable. So, and it's been nothing but a joy always working with him and hanging out. So
that was a good band too. I mean, Kip Winger on bass, and I don't think a lot of people still realize it to this day. I'm like, you guys realize another monster on bass and talent. Yep. I mean, what a band you guys were, all you guys.
Well, I met Kip.
Lost you for a minute. Hold on.
I'll be back.
Camera, go.
Kip was, I met him when we were recording Constrictor with Beau Hill. Mm-hmm. And, right away, anything we requested that he do, he just sat down and did it. And then we wanted him to sing. He sang perfectly. It was just, so I said, dude, you got to come on tour with us. And it was like while we were in New York, so that's how that happened. The rest of the band showed up from auditions. There was Ken Mary, who as soon as he played, I go, well, there's the drummer. We had 10 more guys coming in. I don't know who was going to top that. And then what was the other? We got Paul Taylor. We got Arthur Nero, Devlin Seven, that guitar player. Just amazing people.
Right, a great lineup.
Yeah, and I always think there's a certain amount of luck with that. So,
there's luck, but there's chemistry, there's live musicians. But it was also the perfect storm. You were at the perfect point in your life to invigorate him. He was coming at a point, of a governor. Plus, by him doing that and everything working, all the musicians, he got to claim what he was.
Yeah.
His reputation, the shows and stuff. People weren't just feeding off of his old history. He was still out there doing the shows, the songs, the lyrics, while people were copying him or emulating him. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
That,
I mean, I wish our, the funny thing about being in the, let's say, the rock music industry, like when you actually step into the jet stream, so to speak, um, you have to realize that there's a couple of dynamics happening and all the creative stuff, the fun stuff playing and everything. But, you got to keep in mind that the business aspect of it, the people who are sort of running the show on the back end, the whole equity earning machine, they, they have their own opinions as to what should happen and how much money they're going to lay out for things. And, so when we started doing all that, I think we were on MCA, which in terms of distribution is a very, very difficult company. They don't, and they didn't have anybody in the rock division at that point.
I don't think I
So
can still name anybody now. Like a
what?
lot of even rock bands back then, like a lot of rock bands had like one album from each MCA, and then nothing ever happened to them. They were good bands.
Yeah, and we had an R&B guy handling the distribution of our record. That's how bad it got. And then we did the Raise Your Fist and Yell album, which the band after the first tour hit the ground running. I mean, we were beasts, all of us, on our instruments and just understanding Alice's voice and what the music was. So that album really represented kind of a culture of violence that Alice and I had sort of ginned up, so to speak. And, the record company had no idea what to do with it. Now, by the same token, you can't play for money. You just can't do it. What I mean is you can take a gig and accept payment, but that can't be the motive for why you play. So, and the history of musicians has never been one of excessively profitable. Although these days there's a few artists that do reach that incredible level, which is awesome. I think it's great. So, but the grand majority, has to go through like a lot of sort of different permutations to try to, hit something that's also going to make money. Mm-hmm. But if you start chasing a trend, like you were mentioning, or you start chasing a certain style, or, suddenly you wear shorts, you get tattoos and shave your head, they're just not going to, it's not the way it is. Your first entry into the public eye has to be substantive enough to at least do something that's memorable. I mean, I remember Ken Mary said, dude, why are you so huge? And I said, well, first of all, I have no idea. I just started doing it. But I also realized that once the camera passes over me, people will remember who I was. And that basically is the truth. That actually did happen. Whether or not it was a great idea or not, I don't know. But people did remember me. So it's one of those things.
Well, I think you showed that somebody could be huge and still shred without having, like sausage fingers or whack a pack of hot dogs against it. But you could still
and forearms and hands. People don't know.
That shows, because there was a stereotype. In the 80s is really weird for anyhow. But one of the best things I think you're playing and you do it now with your own thing, because you have a really great voice, and you think you wouldn't be able to sing as high and as clean as you do. Because nowadays it's visual, everything's like, raw. Yeah. But you also have that,
right?
Which is great. And but you wrote songs, and now I'm sure Alice do this to his voice, and that's the key when you try writing songs that aren't in songs not to their voice. It doesn't be a sound or a lyric. It could be all different pieces. It doesn't always work, and that's why I went to school. It was like, oh, music business, they see. That one's selling right there. So we're going to, all of us, because at that point, they're just banks, and they're going to, invest in a copy of that one that's making money and get a bunch of them out before that's not popular anymore. And they have to find the next thing that's bankable,
Right.
Yeah. You were established. You were who you were. You were not going to be somebody different. You had your look. You had your sound.
Right.
And we're talking today.
What's that?
I said, we're talking today. People still know you in the music. Yeah, no, playing.
I mean, the biggest deal for me is if ever I get a text message or anything, and any of my songs meant something to people, that has turned out to be like some of the biggest moments from me. And people don't realize they'll say something on Facebook, or Instagram, and I can't believe it. Somebody was really down and out, and they heard the song Fighter or some other song, and it just lifted them out of their depression and everything. And some people were really in bad shape, and now they lift weights and they feel healthy and all that, and those are the type of positive influences that you want. You want people, you want to sort of liberate people from whatever moment they seem to be trapped in, and we all have them, so it's the beauty and value of music, and it certainly is the beauty and value of why I ever got involved. I see that now. So
it's, you brought up a point that everyone has, where like being creative, they have other things they do. I've come to the point I'm always like, who am I talking to? Is music? What's their creative superpower? Because everyone's either, I know yours now, but they're really good cooks, or they're painters, or they're gardeners. They do multiple things. There's always one extra music superpower they have,
yeah,
that they're really into, because it's
you have that too. Like people, I think that do interviews and it's based on music. They have a true passion for it, and they're very good at it. Like your questions and the conversation and everything is very it's engaging, and I believe it's important work. I mean, regardless of what the following is, regardless of what the response is to different interviews, you see some will get more than others, but it's a really incredible kind of a network to be involved in. And I guarantee you do other stuff. I'm sure there's other stuff that you're good at. I mean, and you have kids, so you're seeing that, wow, there was this Indian friend of mine, East Indian. His name was Gautam, and he's one of those Mensa guys. He's like, his brain is just ridiculous. And he was telling me he just had a kid, and he said he looks at his daughter's brain, she's a baby, as a hard drive, and she said the only problem is you can't delete anything. He said, so, I'll do something really stupid and I'll go, well, that's there forever, in some manifestation, but yeah, everybody, I think, and that's when people say, I don't know what to do. It's almost like they got surrounded. There's a maelstrom of negativity and thoughts and everything that's just floating around them. And they've lost the faith in thinking, if I try this and I do it, and I fail, it's going to lead me somewhere else. I'm going to end up in a different genre or a different job description or whatever it is, only because activity is what creates success. Inactivity, obviously, what was that guy Jordan Peterson said, when you're born, you're in this thing 100% and it's going to kill you. So what excuse do you have for not trying to live a magnificent life? And in a lot of ways, that's a critical way for anybody to think. I was just talking to somebody who feels, very lost. They lost, everything in their life, and they're just upset. And I'd say the fact that you're upset and the level of your depression and frustration is the linchpin for getting out of it. It's essential if you're not happy with the way things are. So you can keep digging a hole, or you can start digging your way out. And I'm quoting a lot of people, but Mike Tyson's coach said to him, discipline is doing things you hate, but doing them like you love them. And that's where success is. That's where it's hidden. There's a lot of hatred stuff that you don't want to do. You get through it, and now you've taken a step up, however small or large that might be. So, and that's, when I talk to musicians who feel, depressed, their careers didn't do whatever, I think to whatever level that you're going to get, it's always no until it's yes. And when it's yes, you build on that. that's what you do. So, you try to get, people try to get, I'm in Hollywood, so I know a lot of actors that are trying to get jobs and musicians that wishes this and that. And all. It's just, you have no choice. You just got to fight. People told me, there's no reason why you're going to make it. There's millions of guitar players. What are you doing? Just get a regular job. And I just thought to myself, I just know that I have no choice. This is what I'm going to do. This is all I love in life right now. So I think those are the
right.
feelings.
You got to evolve though too. I mean, like for me, like I never had a desire to do what I'm doing. This came out of COVID and promoting artists, and
Nice.
It's evolved. But I look back at my life. I've done music in my life. I've done video. I've taught video to people before. I've done everything I've done has kind of led up to me doing this. Like, the only thing short of just this part right here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My
It's
whole
the
life is knowledge. So it literally is like, and then as you get older, you start thinking about it. Like a lot of things I thought I wanted to do when I was younger, couldn't do, and you evolve into the things. And finally, I realized what you're good at and using the best of what you have. Like kind of like your life builds to who you're going, like what you're going to be. And you look back and you just, all those skills were adding up, you
yeah.
know,
Yep.
and that's the best you're going to be. I think if you put everything in one spot though, and you don't try doing anything else, you're gonna fail and you're gonna feel really hard on yourself if you're not gonna, because it's hard to evolve.
We're only here for a minute. Do a lot of stuff. Do a lot of things. Why not? The fuck? Is somebody going to yell at you? Who cares? You know?
But the survival, like look what happened to rock. You know, it peaked, and a lot of talented musicians crumbled from finances, and
Right.
then some of them had drug problems or emotional. It's hard being young and being successful, them losing it all and not knowing how to handle it emotionally. So it's a big learning curve for a lot of people. So it's great now is seeing a lot of the bands that are back or still together, survived. A lot of the guys all got different jobs, now do it for fun. The people they've become, it's fantastic to be able to see the other end. And that's because I'm 51. To, you know, saying the growth of all those bands and those people,
Yeah.
because they had to evolve. And
Yeah.
a lot of
And
stuff you said.
well, the thing is that people that are super successful also have tremendous, some of them have tremendous problems. It's not a guarantee for happiness. There's happy moments, but you know, we've seen some of our most beloved rock stars commit suicide, you know, because it's, you know, it's rough out there. Life is hard and it's not supposed to be super easy. And it really never will be. But, you know, I think there's a tremendous amount of, and I'm not getting excessively, romantic about this, but there's a lot of, you know, what you could consider to be miracles out there. And it's just almost like every day you get up and do something, you have the potential to create something great. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you think you are. You really do have a tremendous amount of positive potential. So like somebody said to me, well, then what are you going to record another song for? Why don't you try to get a record deal? And I said, first of all, I don't know if I could. Second of all, I have no desire to be calling somebody up and asking them, you know, why this happened and that happened. And they give you all their opinions of what they're doing. Their business, like I was just on Frontiers Records, and their business model is very hard coded, and it's how they make money. And I like guys. They can't stand me, I'm sure, because I'm not an easy one to deal with. If I see something that's wrong, I'll say it, but I'm not doing it in a contentious way where I don't. There's one guy there who I thought was kind of a knucklehead, but it's a really like Serafino and Mario are the two guys that own it. You think about it, these guys were in an apartment. They developed this company. Now they're like the number one 80s rock, music company, record company around there. They've got a good business model. It works for them. So I don't expect them to go out of their way for me, and even though they did a little bit. So I can't complain about them. What I realize now is rather than complain, what I do is I'm just going to do some more projects and just release them myself, And I got some business people that they'll finance it, and they know these networks to try to maximize whatever the impact is.
And I think you just need that, and like distribution is really what it comes down to for most artists nowadays. The thing with Frontiers, because Frontiers seems to be coming up a lot in my conversations with people.
People are pretty happy. I wasn't.
The point is, I think what it is because, and this is my opinion from hearing above stuff and underneath it, is that they have a model, but their model is only for the album at the time, and it's very short-lived financial impact. Yeah. Whereas a lot of the artists used to in the 70s and the 80s, and everyone has always been chasing that, is when you foster an album and it goes and you work an album and you do this. A lot of the bands wouldn't have been made it, So when Frontiers does it, it has a shelf life.
Oh, yeah.
It's fast. And that cuts a band at its knees, though, especially in a rock band, because rock band works it.
Yeah. See, the thing is, though, it's the genre of music is not anywhere near as popular. So they have to really keep that stuff tight. There's a lot of other things they could do that wouldn't be part of that same system that you talked about, which was really viable. It's like a tour, a video, the type of advertising magazine. You know, they put out some serious equity. My Geffen record was one of those, and the same thing. Even my first record, they gave me quite a budget. You know, I think that's because of my manager. But you know, once the record came out, they didn't do anything. So, you know, I sort of butt my head up against these record companies, you know, enough. So I don't feel like doing it anymore. And it was the reason why I disappeared for a long time, because as the music scene changed, which it inevitably would, you know, with the arrival of quote unquote, the Nirvana movement was inevitable. The first time, you know, Robert Plant sang that song, you know, any of those songs, Dazed and Confused, or the first, you know, Led Zeppelin, the first time anybody ever heard them, the shelf life begins. It's not going to last forever. And the music styles are going to change. And then the next nuclear explosion, you know, in some ways, there were others, you know, Def Leppard and everything, but it was Van Halen. And so now very few people listen to 80s music in the United States, definitely. And in Europe, it's a little bit better, but it's not like what it used to be, because they used to, you know, Def Leppard and bands like that used to own the music industry. So the ultimate point is that you have to sort of, before you go into a record deal, you got to see the limitations of that company, and they're not going to change. They're not going to step off of it. If it's a shoe company and I come up with a shoe, they're not going to completely change their marketing system and who they're trying to sell the shoe to just for me.
Right.
They're going to, it seems like it has something like that, but really they're just going to put it into their, you know, their machine there and just hope for the best. So I have no grand expectations for any record company. Shep taught me that on my first record, which was $250,000, and I was completely unheard of. Nobody knew who I was. So it just shows you, you know, those board meetings, you know, like depending on how big your guy is going into that meeting, you're going to end up with, but that, you know, I could have gotten $1 million for that record deal. If the record company's not going to do what it has to do in order to promote it and get it happening, if they don't believe in the artist to that extent, that money's going to disappear. You know, the guys you were talking about that were hurting for money, it just shows you that writing music is the real estate of the music industry. So if there's any young musicians or people that are trying to figure out what to do, you know, to get in the music industry, make sure that you write. Even if you think you're not a good writer, just write with people.
Own your songs. Don't sign them over.
Yeah, when I wrote, I mentioned before, when I wrote with Paul Stanley, it was just business. We just worked the whole time. And we hung out, went to movies and stuff like that, just as friends after that. But whenever we were working, his work ethic was phenomenal. Same thing with Desmond Child. You walk in there, you're going to leave with a song. It may not be done, but he doesn't fuck around, you know? And I'll remember, it was really funny. I had just gotten a publishing advance, you know, and the number was pretty stunning to me. And I walk in to tell Desmond, and he just got off the phone and he said, I just finished my deal with EMI Publishing. I said, oh yeah. And he goes, it's $1 million a year. And I went, that's good. I probably won't tell you what I had ready to say, but that was awesome. Not even close, you know? So there's all these different tiers and levels and everything. You just gotta live your life and just say, I took my fucking best shot. That's all that fucking matters. And something will come of it. You know, that's the leap of faith. You know, everybody talks about religion and faith and everything. If you get great at what you do, my belief is the world will beat a path to your door. I'm not saying I was greater than anybody, but I put in the hours. And I think that's the key.
I think people need to enjoy what you're doing. Like, to me, I realized early on that it's not about, once you get there, you're like, whatever you're trying to achieve, you're like, all right, now what? Look back, I'm like, the best parts were like the steps. Like, I succeeded in this. Like, it's the journey is the best part, I think. And that's you got to keep going. You know, if you think you're going to get there and be like, there's a big golden reward all the time, every day, you're going to feel euphoric. You don't. The euphoric part is succeeding and following your dreams.
Yeah. And there's all these bumper stickers about it. You know, there's no success without failure. Well, I'm never going to like failure. So I don't know, you know, hey, this is getting me closer to success. My foot fell off. You know, it's like, that's not, you know, those pep talks don't necessarily work. The main thing is you just got to stick your head into the dirt and just start, you know, whatever you do when your head's in the dirt, which I wouldn't really know what you do. I've never had my head in the dirt, but seriously, you got to just get in there and just, you know, start fighting. So.
So this is great news. You're doing more music though too. On a side note,
What's that?
great you're doing more music because I think I did love your last stuff. It's great.
Did
Realize
you
it's
like?
how you put it out. It's
Yeah,
it's good. You just got to distribute it somehow. Whether it's record label or not. Um,
yeah.
do you play out at all though? Are you playing out at all? Or I know COVID got kind of weird too on top of it.
Fantasy camp. I'm going to be doing some playing in the studio quite a bit in the next 6 months. But this is awful. I don't really. I don't know if I. The point is that when I was a kid, I used to look at bands. They were young bands. I loved them. They were fucking awesome, right? And young guys and girls, in these bands, they're angry, and they're angry because they're going up against the man. They're gonna fight the power, whatever it is, whatever that is, whether it's a relationship or it's the government or money, whatever. And the problem is that when you get past 50, you're angry still, but it's because you have a bad back, So I'm not sure. Like when I see these older bands playing, I think more power to them. It's wonderful. The audience is there, and they're getting to see, a version of what the guys that played the soundtrack to their high school lives, that sort of a thing. Me, I think there's a certain cutoff point of like jumping on stage and, and it's disappointing to a lot of people, but I just kind of think that I don't think I'm like, some monster or anything, but I just think that, when you get older, you have to make sure that everything's lined up properly in the show and all that stuff. And I don't know if to pretend to be 25 years old and hammering out these rock songs doesn't seem, but there's some guys that really do it. Like I actually saw Jack Russell. I was thinking it was 5 years ago. I played a song with him on stage. I was amazed at his voice. That guy's kicking ass. The same thing with the guy from Queensryche. He's still singing. And of course, Alice. So there are exceptions to the rule.
Well, that's my point. I mean, you have Alice as the biggest example, and he didn't cash in. There's no shelf life, and he's not trying to be anything he isn't. He's just being him.
He's just being. See how, he once told me. He said to me. I said, hey, I guess we're all, getting a little older. We were just laughing and hanging out. He said, look, the good thing for me is the worse I look, the more popular I am. You know what I mean? So he totally gets it. He's being funny, but he totally gets it. So.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, for you, if you don't feel like playing as you get older, that's one thing. But I also think there shouldn't be a shelf life. And I also think artists shouldn't have to feel they have to dress a certain way anymore. If you just want to play. You're in better shape now than probably most 20-year-olds. You know what I mean? If I wore a red shirt, it would look like a before and after photo here going on. And So
no, I do pay a lot of attention to that, obviously. Yeah.
But it's just playing for fun. I just meant like just going up and playing.
I work out maybe 40 minutes when I go. I don't sit there for 2 hours. I don't really like the gym because I have kind of gone a little bit, but now I'm at the point now where, I just want to go in there. It's a good vacation from my work. Playing guitar, I don't consider to be work, but sometimes when you're doing film stuff, there's just fires starting everywhere, and it's just a constant battle to get into the end zone. Yeah.
What is your process when you're writing songs at this point now? Do you have like an idea? Are you just noodling and you get a riff?
Well, I listen to a lot of music, so I get inspired to do certain things. So I'm always writing down lyrics, and most of them are awful, but they capture the moment or the feeling that I had when I started thinking of the song. So for me, very often, I'll start singing a melody over chords, and then the lyrics come into play. And I'm always open to other people writing with me on lyrics and stuff like that. I'm not one of those people that, like, for example, if we're in the studio, I don't want to play the bass part. I don't want to tell the bass player what to play. I want him to know what to do, or, the producer kind of nudges him in whatever direction. So, and for example, Alyssa's work on that beginning of the end, I just said, she said, what do you want me to do? And I said, whatever you think, I'd like you to listen to the song, let it get inside you a little bit, and just, everything she sent, we used, and we didn't change it. It's that good. Really? it just depends on what people's processes are. She's a very, for my video, she said to me, Kane, I'll go to wherever you and Alice are to be in the video. She literally flew from Europe to Montreal, waited in the airport for 6 hours, and flew to Vancouver to be in the video. Now that's somebody who's devoted to geez, there it goes again. That's devoted to music. Alyssa, very devoted to music. So, and her art and her creativity is everything that she's about, and unfortunately, the record company didn't do anything to promote the video. I think it's approaching 500,000, but I mean, with Alice and Alyssa on a video just by proxy, it should probably hit 1 million, like kind of on its own. But
videos are weird though, I'm gonna say, sorry, we keep getting cut over you. Like,
no,
for example, like you talk about like viewership, whatever, like say for my show, like you look at some of my numbers and you can look at my YouTube clips, the numbers for some people maybe seem lower, but I also have a podcast, and the podcast numbers are always like huge. I don't like promote because I'm just like a jerk, but I'm very fortunate is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Even if it looks like it's low numbers on a video, sometimes the audience is different.
But YouTube, an odd.
The algorithm is really weird, and it's a fun bonus that I put it out there. But the podcast of this is really what the big part of my show.
Well, see, if you and I had a record company, and some artist comes in with an Alice Cooper or Alyssa White Glues thing, we're going to drop 10K with YouTube, and you have to do that.
Oh yeah.
If you don't drop some money, you're not going to get a good start. There was a functional thing that they wouldn't change. You're not supposed to leave a video up there in private and then debut it, because YouTube's algorithms aren't smart enough to differentiate, even though everybody's always has theories about it. You just don't fuck with it because they're changing the software.
You can't make it a premiere and then change it as a premiere, like also for something, and also it knocks you into a different algorithm no matter who you are.
Yeah, well, they're changing their software and rewriting it literally every week.
Yeah.
So to think that how, you just got to be super careful, and somebody might say, well, if you do that, it could be worse. And that's not the case. No. If it's private, the YouTube begins to recognize it as something with 3 likes or views in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. So I asked them, I said, just pull it down and put it right back up. Yes. They wouldn't do it. Just attitude. There's nothing excessively wrong about Frontiers. I would never do another project with them, and they would never do another one with me. That's the end of the story.
But it's an easy thing. That's the remedy. That, I mean, like I said, YouTube is very weird. You know what I mean? Like we could put this up and you could do huge or you could do small. But I know I can tell you right now on Amazon and Spotify, everyone's going to listen to it because everybody listens to a podcast, either iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm on. So I know, and I don't worry about the numbers like that because I'm not motivated by that. But I know, because the goal of the show is to expose an audience. I use the word expose, nice professionally here, to all different types of acts. Because I try getting everybody on here to be open. You got to be open to all types of music.
Right.
But in a podcast, in a car, people seem to be listening more for travel. It's weird. Video is just a weird thing for people. It's fun as a visual. It's really funny. The first thing you see has to pull you in. If you don't get yanked into the video, because if you look at the analytics, you'll see a certain amount of people watched it for 10 seconds. Somebody watched it in it, so all those things influence the ultimate number. But yeah, well, all in all, the music industry has been, just a fantastic, not the industry, but just being in music and me being very lucky. I had a really fucking awesome time. So I never complain about, what's going on. My work ethic is what matters. Is what's,
The only thing I complain about is if I can't play something on the guitar, so it pisses me off. I try to learn it.
And then this was one concept here is the fact that still you're a generation that whether you want to play it or not, you can go to a club and it doesn't matter. Like you could say your Instagram would have, I don't even know how many you have, but then you look at another artist that have like 100,000, something crazy. You don't know who she is, and she's 17 years old. And she plays beautiful guitar. Yeah. And then say you have a third of those numbers, whatever, right? And they're huge.
She's pretty.
Right.
Yeah. That's a big deal. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. But what will happen is now a label will be more apt to look at that person than you to sign them. And then you try getting somebody on the road. You know who's going to fill it up? You. No one's going to come see the 17-year-old person, not because they're a girl. What I'm saying, because of the world.
What record companies do is first of all, they look at, the future. How long is this person going to be around? They look at the numbers of other things they've done in the past. And like if you had a band and you went to get a record deal, or your kids did, let's try to get a record deal. One of the things they'll ask, let's say they have a great song, really great song, and a bunch of them. And the band is really good, they'll say, how many Facebook followers do you have?
Yeah.
That is a very common question now and it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with it because it's a tremendous mall. It's like if you have a store in a shopping mall, it's like how many people are going to walk by, and you try to figure out the rate. It
doesn't translate though. I think it doesn't really translate back into money for them. And I talked to artists. Only a few managers have ever reached out to me and said, "What are your numbers?" I'm like, "What are your numbers?" But I'll get a Desmond Child. He's like, I just reached out to him. He's like, let's do it. I've had, Piercy, everyone, no one has an issue. No one worries about numbers.
Child, I was like going, oh, he'll do it. He's fun. He's a funny guy.
Great stories. He is solid the earth. He's the kind of guy you could sit down with and chit chat with. Point is, those guys aren't worried about numbers. The record companies worry about numbers. And guess what? They've already rooted for themselves a million times over. They're struggling for streams now. They don't have the formula.
Right.
I would tell a band, don't get a record label. Figure out a distribution deal and find different ways to back it and managers and don't send over your music. There's ways of still doing it.
The area that's tough to grab onto is represented, I think, perfectly with the Misfits. Doyle is a friend of mine, and
he's dating Alyssa, right?
What?
He's with Alyssa, right?
He's Doyle? With Alyssa.
Yeah,
and that's where I met him. Really great guy and great guitar player. His style is very, very intense, and he kills it. So he was in the original Misfits. Then he was out for a long time, a very long time. And then the band started up again, and now he's back in. Out of nowhere, right before the pandemic, they sold out Madison Square Garden. First time they'd ever even approached that. Or I think, but anyway, it just shows you like their brand exploded. And now they're playing arenas, and that's where they play now, the Misfits.
What's funny is he doesn't know anything about his merchandise. He did an interview recently. He knows nothing about the website. He just plays.
Yeah.
He's got a good team to do that.
The point is that they weren't doing that.
Right,
They weren't that big, and then suddenly it explodes. So everybody tries to explain what that is, but truly it's that sort of limbo gray area of the entertainment business. Like, you'll come up with an amazing song, an amazing performance, and the song Macarena becomes the biggest hit anywhere. So you just can't, and everybody has explanations for it.
Well, think about it. That was maybe authentic at the time for the person who did it. Like almost, you can be authentic to who you are. You know what I mean? That's kind of the thing. Like you are who you are, and the Misfits have always been who they are.
Yeah.
And I think if you're true to who you are, it's gonna stick out for some people. And hold on.
Yeah. It's a good. Yeah. That's the way.
You look at the post. You see the post of the kids with says I'm a musician, and there's a picture of like an acoustic guitar and a notebook on the beach, and how these pre-post things on like Instagram. And I'm like, I thought you're a musician. I don't even see one bit of music on here. No, you know what I mean? It's just like
the thing of it though too is that the Misfits weren't going to change their style to follow anything, and it's that sort of strength of character I think that's brought them to the increased success they're having now. Plus, I went to a couple of the shows. Fucking awesome. Great songs. Great band. Really amazing.
That's actually
is amazing. Doyle, of course, is my friend. I think he's fucking off the charts. But the whole band, everybody's singing and playing amazingly well.
I actually was happy to see these big gigs for them too, because they were lean. We're in some lean years for them. When they kept it going, and they as Lemmy would say, see what you got, run up the flagpole,
Yeah. Yep.
And that's what they did. So it was awesome.
Right.
I'm glad we finally got to talk. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long while. Yeah, I'm glad we got to talk. And I'll take the black acoustic and So if you could, I'll leave my address for you.
Yeah,
Because
right.
that's for this.
Yeah, funny. You're not even asking for the red one is an Aria Pro 2,
Yeah,
1983. I think it's like a Wildcat version or something. That's a nice,
totally.
like a Stratty.
To show you how shallow I am, I'm totally going on looks and color. That's all I care about. Like if I go in to see guitars, I'll go, well, it looks awesome. It's like $80, and I'm like going, I kind of want that one over the. Right now, I'm playing a phenomenal guitar, this Horizon. It's a handcrafted ESP.
Really?
Really amazing. They gave me a great, artist deal on it and everything. It's just, the guitar is just so versatile, and you can really get heavy with it, or you can be really, sort of intricate and delicate with it, and it still responds properly. It's really good.
Don't you find? I love telling other people, like when people have to this really great expensive guitar, sometimes you can buy a high name guitar or an offshoot. And the offshoot sounds better. Like you can get like a Squire guitar.
Right.
The Squire Bullets, I heard some of them are fantastic. Sound better than the high end,
Well,
name
no, if
company.
it sits well in your hand, that's the whole thing for me. In the studio, like if I have a guitar that plays beautifully and my hand relaxes and everything. It was a Rudy Sarzo told me that Randy Rhoads said that your guitar pick hand, you have to feel like you're holding a sparrow. You have to be that delicate and light with it, And so if the drummer is not good, if the drummer's feel is not right, I tense up. My arms are like, I look totally ripped and like, boy, that guy really works out, but it's awful. I want to just be able to relax and play, So yeah, so it just depends on a couple of things for me. A guitar can be cheap, and if it feels good in my fingers, I want to play it all day.
Well, that's the point.
But to me, like, the guitar and the bass, well, let's, in my instance, the guitar and the drum are both percussion instruments, both striking something. And if those things don't match up, the snare and the kick and the thing, it's going to, you're going to start getting, at least it really fucks me up. I know some people that just coast over whatever, really great studio musicians that just sort of, roll in, do their shit, and they leave, and it doesn't matter if the band sucked. I'm not that good.
That's another musician level right there, as a studio musician. That's another thick as leather. Yeah. Their skin's going to be thick. That's a props to them,
It's pretty amazing. I can't remember the guy's name. Really fan. He's well known too, guitar player. He wasn't in Toto. He was like sort of the studio guy in California. And I walked in there and I had a Bob Bradshaw modified 50-watt head and a cabinet, little foot pedals here and there. And the door opens and this guy walks in reeling a skyline of effects, and it's just like tremendous, like, $150,000 worth of equipment all over, 200,000. So I said, are you? And he said, no, he'll be here in a minute. Turned out to be an amazing guy. And his thing was, I'd say, can you play Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix? He hit 3 pedals and boom. And it's just exactly from the record, Could you play, whatever I asked him to play? He was able to, he knew that the pedal configuration to get the exact sound.
Okay, so you're replicating it. Well,
yeah.
I can see in the studio, if they're like, I'm looking for a Pantera sound, I'm looking for a Jimmy Page sound. He's like, gotcha.
He'd say, okay. That's what he was like. All right.
That's his toolkit, right? That's his big red toolbox.
Yep.
That's really cool. All right, man. I will thank you. And I'm glad we could do this.
Yeah, this was really fun. I really like talking to you.